The wealth loop. Imagine wealth not as a destination, but as a rhythm, an unending, compounding beat that cycles forward, folding in on itself like a well-tuned symphony. The wealth loop is not just about money, but the mind behind it. A system of thinking, of behaving, of rewiring how you perceive effort, reward, and momentum. In ancient Japanese culture, there's a practice known as kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. This technique doesn't hide the flaw. Instead, it honors the history of the object. The crack becomes a vein of value. The wealth loop begins in much the same way. Whatever your past with money has been, scarce or abundant, it is not hidden. It is acknowledged, and it becomes the foundation upon which you build something more luminous. Let your mind settle into that image. Golden lines highlighting the journey. The imperfect breakthrough that starts the cycle. We begin the loop with awareness, the first node in the circle. You cannot direct your life toward wealth if you are numb to your patterns. The brain craves familiarity, even if it undermines our growth. It replays decisions like a looping melody, comfortable riffs of avoidance, rationalization, or temporary comfort. Awareness breaks this. Awareness is what goes quiet in the moment before you order takeout for the 5th time in a week. It's the voice that says, "This behavior is not aligned with the future I want." To activate awareness, try this. Carry a small notebook or use a note-taking app and track every financial decision, no matter how small, for 10 days. Not for judgment, not for guilt. Simply to observe what triggers spending, what motivates saving, what decisions are made reactively, and what decisions are crafted with intention. In doing this, you begin your entrance into the wealth loop. The gold begins to form along the fracture. From awareness, the loop moves into education, but not the endless scroll of tips and tricks, not the dopamine-soaked bites of content disguised as insight. This phase is about depth. Reading a single book and applying it with conviction is more powerful than consuming hundreds of surface-level posts. Consider classics like The Richest Man in Babylon, not because of its antiquated language, but because of its psychological roots. It speaks in allegory, which the brain absorbs more holistically. Understanding old ideas through new neurons. Education may also come in unexpected forms. Conversations. Observing how certain people speak about money, their tone, their ease or discomfort, the words they choose, all of it informs. And your brain, ever plastic, begins to rewire its assumptions. What is possible becomes a wider spectrum. Next in the loop is experimentation, the step where many freeze. Too comfortable in thought, too hesitant in action. But wealth is generated through imperfect movement. Consider a child learning to walk. No judgment when they fall, only continued effort. Your money habits function similarly. Set up a small investment account. Try automating savings at an uncomfortably high percentage for just 1 month. Create a micro-business for the sake of learning, not earning. In these acts, you push the loop forward. You rehearse wealth with your behavior, not just your aspirations. There is a concept from Sufi philosophy known as the friend within the friend. It refers to an inner guide, a deeper compass, revealed only through experience. This experimentation phase is where that guide can emerge, ignited by risk, refined by failure, and expanded in small wins. This part of the loop is alive, not hypothetical. It teaches the part of the brain that only wakes when there's skin in the game. And now, the loop turns toward automation, where behavior becomes default and systems support growth without needing constant willpower. Build your infrastructure. Use technology as a silent ally, automated savings transfers, scheduled debt payments, reminders not to spend, but to reflect. The brain loves efficiency. By reducing decision fatigue, you make space for vision. You minimize sabotage. You quiet the noise that often derails forward movement. Think of your financial systems like irrigation channels in a garden. You don't water each plant by hand every day. You design a flow, and then you let it nourish while you tend to the growth. Wealth rarely bursts forth in spontaneous eruption. It flows along carved pathways, quiet, consistent, cumulative. As the loop continues, it narrows into mastery. Not the mastery others see, but the kind you feel. When you know you can handle unexpected bills, you move through life differently. When you understand your patterns, your metrics, your methods, your stress dissolves. Mastery fuses certainty with humility. It allows for increase and it allows for rest. But the loop does not end here. It circles back. It refreshes. For every new income tier, a new layer of awareness is needed. For each financial season, recession or windfall, the loop breathes again. Your brain, shaped by neuroplastic repetition, follows the melody it knows. This is the hidden power of rich thinking. It is not one-time brilliance, but the compounding of intelligent loops. At this moment, pause and consider your own loop. Which stage calls to you the most? And what would it feel like to simply begin? In Finland, there's a word, sisu. It has no direct English translation. It embodies a deep, inward strength, resilience not in loud triumph, but in quiet, enduring action. Sisu is what powers the wealth loop through dry seasons. When motivation wavers, when results stall, when austerity tests your beliefs, and yet you continue, with stillness, with steadiness. This is one of the most potent brain hacks to build wealth, not to wait for external validation, but to find drive in internal consistency. So how do you apply this loop, realistically, in the modern world where distractions are endless and expectations heavy? Start small. Choose just one behavior to place in the loop. Begin tracking, if only for a week. Read just one chapter from a timeless financial book and write a reflection on what it means to you today. Automate one bill. Test one habit. These decisions do not shout, they hum. But over time, the hum becomes a rhythm, and the rhythm becomes a score. A soundtrack to a life composed with grace, awareness, and intentional wealth. And when it is all too much, when the future feels uncertain and the effort feels unrewarded, remember the crack in the bowl filled with gold. The part of you that once bent or broke, now glistening with value, not in spite of the fracture, but because of it. You are not behind. You are cycling forward. The wealth loop is not a straight line. It bends, it rewinds, it spirals. But each pass teaches more. Each iteration flows smoother. And one day you'll realize the rhythm is no longer something you chase, but something you are. Let that idea settle tonight. What if you're already inside the loop, just waiting to move with it? Dopamine discipline. In a quiet room, where the noise of the day fades and thoughts begin to settle like dust in the evening sun, we begin an inward journey. This is not just about wealth in numbers or accounts. This is about the inner circuitry that shapes your choices, attracts your focus, and silently pulls the strings of your desires. Today, we talk about dopamine, the brain's messenger of motivation, and how disciplining it can unlock a deeper, longer-lasting wealth. Dopamine is not happiness. It is not pleasure itself. It is the spark that drives you toward something, like a whisper from your future self, urging you to go a little further, to work a little harder, to stay just a little longer. Evolution shaped it to help our ancestors find food, shelter, survival. Yet in our modern world, dopamine has become tangled in a constant loop of gratification. Social media, endless scrolling, instant purchases, and buzzing notifications hijack a system built for hunting and gathering, and instead keep our most critical neural pathways chained to the shallow rewards of now. To build wealth, true, sustaining wealth, you must disrupt that. You must take the reins. There is a little-known symbol etched on the ancient temples of Athens, the laibris, a double-headed axe associated with balance and control, misunderstood for centuries. Some thought it was a weapon, others saw it as a symbol of paradox. In truth, it may have represented discipline over dual forces, desire and restraint. In the dance of dopamine, the laibris reminds us that the ability to act and the ability to delay action are both blades of the same tool. Wealth creation is slow, methodical, often invisible while it unfolds. It depends more on consistency than burst. The brain, however, doesn't crave what is consistent. It seeks novelty. That's the essence of dopamine. It's released not by receiving the reward, but in the anticipation of it. The scroll before the post, the craving before the bite, the illusion before the reality. So what happens when you begin to delay those bursts on purpose? When you fast from dopamine? When you remove the shiny distractions, the micro hits, the cookies of modern life, and give your neural pathways a rest? Something begins to shift. At first, there may be discomfort, boredom, an oddly itchy silence in your mind. But if you hold through, the brain resets. Baseline dopamine levels stabilize. Suddenly, reading a book feels satisfying again. Deep work becomes pleasurable, not painful. The long-term goals regain clarity. Investing becomes intuitive. Saving becomes satisfying. Creating becomes joyful. This is dopamine discipline. Not elimination, but calibration. Start small. Pick one sensory indulgence. Maybe it's checking your phone immediately upon waking, and delay it by just 10 minutes. Then 20. Replace that time with something neutral. Staring outside, stretching your fingers, drinking water slowly. You're not trying to substitute dopamine from another source. You're allowing the gap. This gap is where discipline is born. Then go further. Designate one day each week as a low dopamine day. Reduce stimulation. No sugar, no phone, no music. Just presence. Let your thoughts arise and settle again. Watch how your brain reacts. It's like uncovering a terrain you forgot you walked once. Eventually, begin linking dopamine to wealth-building actions. Every time you invest an hour improving your skill, pause afterward and acknowledge it. Write down what you did. Allow your mind to savor that effort. You are teaching the brain that productivity, not procrastination, is rewarding. This rewiring isn't instant. It takes time, but it is happening. In studies, the brain's reward systems showed significant change in participants who journaled their gratitude and progress at the end of each week. Not because of the journaling itself, but because of the reflective focus it created. When you notice progress, dopamine flows more naturally toward effort. And that's when you begin to crave the work, not the shortcut. There is an old Japanese principle called ma. It refers not to the object, but to the space between objects. The pause between notes and music. The silence that makes the sound become striking. In practicing dopamine discipline, you are creating ma in your mind. Space between impulse and action. Between urge and gratification. And in that space, you rediscover control. Wealth, at its core, is about choices, the ability to select the future over the present. And the practice of deliberate dopamine discipline strengthens that very muscle. It's one of the most invisible yet powerful brain hacks to build wealth over time. As you move forward, ask yourself, what would change if your rewards came not from the consuming but the creating? What might happen if the pleasure wasn't in arrival, but in the slow and steady walk toward it? There's a calm kind of power in training your mind to work for you, not against you. A quiet transformation, like a river reshaping the valley, invisible in the moment, undeniable in time. So tonight, as you rest, consider this. Are you controlling your desires, or are your desires quietly controlling the shape of your life? And if who you become depends on what you delay, what will you choose to crave tomorrow? Scarcity versus abundance. Close your eyes if you can. Take a deep breath. Let your mind drift for a moment away from the noise, the obligations of the day, the long shadow of your to-do list. Let's imagine together. Picture two lakes. One is small, shallow, murky, tucked away in a canyon of jagged stone. When it rains, the lake is full, but the moment the skies dry, its waters shrink. Every inch of it is rationed, counted, and nervously guarded. This is scarcity. The other lake, in contrast, is vast. You can't quite see where it ends. It is fed by underground springs, constant and quiet, swollen with the minerals of ancient earth. Surrounding it is a calm space, lush and inviting. No one panics here. There is always enough. This is abundance. The journey to wealth is not just paved in action, strategy, and making the right investments. At its core, it is a journey of perception. The brain doesn't merely respond to reality, it constructs it. And in that construction, Your belief about the very nature of resources, time, money, opportunity, and what's possible acts like an invisible architect behind every decision you make. When we operate from scarcity, whether consciously or not, our thoughts orbit survival. We become fixated on what we lack. Not enough money, not enough time, not enough knowledge. The world begins to feel like a place of closed doors, limited pieces of a diminishing pie. Ironically, it is this very mindset, this compulsion to hoard, protect, react, that often repels the very thing we long for: growth, opportunity, wealth. Scarcity thinking is not about being poor. You can have a full bank account and still be trapped in scarcity. You can wear luxury items, drive the high-end car, and still carry the quiet ache of "I don't have enough." Because scarcity is not in the wallet, it's in the wiring. This wiring can often trace back to early experiences. Maybe you grew up hearing that money was hard to come by, that rich people were greedy, that good things don't come easy. Maybe each success in your life came with a side dish of guilt. Over time, the brain forms neural pathways that reinforce these beliefs. And here begins the cycle. A loop where fear quietly drives choices, where safety feels more rational than expansion. Now picture the alternative. Abundance doesn't mean you ignore obstacles. It doesn't mean you spend recklessly or pretend everything's fine when it's not. Abundance is the deep-seated belief that what you need either already exists or will be created. That opportunities are not finite but renewable. That generosity is not depleting but expansive. That you can become more, with ease. There's an interesting symbol in ancient Eastern philosophy, one not spoken of often in the mainstream: the mythical Chintamani stone. Said to be a wish-fulfilling jewel, it represents clarity of mind and purity of intention rather than instant riches. The tale goes that only those who have mastered their inner world, those aligned with truth, compassion, and vision, can wield it. In today's terms, it reminds us that abundance doesn't come from chasing more, but from becoming more. This isn't abstract optimism. There's neuroscience repeating this wisdom in modern terms. Studies in neuroplasticity reveal that our thoughts can rewire the brain's architecture. Practicing thoughts of possibility, of generosity, of creation, strengthens neural circuits that support those very beliefs. When you begin from abundance, your brain is more capable of recognizing patterns, seizing opportunity, and moving with confidence. Decision-making shifts from reaction to intention. It's not magic, it's psychology meeting belief. Here's a way to try applying it. Tonight, tomorrow morning, whenever reflection finds you, start by noticing your internal language. When you spend money, what is your first emotion? Fear, guilt, excitement? Scarcity often speaks first as a whisper. I shouldn't spend. I need to save everything. What if it's gone tomorrow? These are understandable thoughts. But instead of pushing them away, examine them. Where do they come from? Then take one action from abundance. It doesn't need to be grand. Maybe it's tipping a little more than usual. Maybe it's investing in yourself, an online course, a book, a new tool. Maybe it's offering help to someone else even when your voice hesitates. These acts, small as they may seem, send a message. Not just to the world, but to your own brain. You are not afraid. You are not being emptied. You are generating value. You are the source. Over time, these actions compound, like interest. Your reality begins to reflect your beliefs, not overnight, but surely and steadily. A woman in Brazil once wrote a journal during a financial crisis. She was a single mother in the favela, struggling to feed her children. Yet every night, she wrote not about what she lacked, but what she was grateful for. One banana, a smile from her neighbor, a breeze during the heat. Within 3 years, almost mysteriously, she had started a small catering business from her home. Today, it employs others from the same community. She never won a lottery. She changed her frequency. This idea is central to the video's theme: brain hacks to build wealth. Because the most powerful hack doesn't involve clever shortcuts or secret strategies. It begins with changing how the mind relates to the world, moving from defense toward creativity, from fear toward flow. When faced with a decision, ask not just what is the safest option, but rather, what is the expansive one? What choice contributes to the future I want to see, not just survive? You'll notice in time that abundant thinkers tend to attract others. Their energy builds trust, partnerships, ideas in motion. Scarcity isolates, abundance connects. And in wealth building, connection is currency. So how do we reset the coding when it's been scarcity for so long? Start where the roots live. Visualization, for instance, is not just wishful thinking. It activates similar neural circuits that fire when the real event occurs. Visualize your financial future not just in numbers, but in texture, detail, sound. What does your kitchen look like when money is no longer tight? What do your mornings feel like? Engage your senses as if painting your future with intention. The more the brain recognizes that life is familiar, the more it will try to bridge the current gap. And remember, abundance is not always loud. Sometimes it's choosing silence over frenetic dashboards. Sometimes it's allowing rest, recognizing that productivity is not moral superiority. Wealth is built in focus, in stillness, in conviction. It grows best in the soil of a calm mind. As you drift back from this thoughtscape, remember, abundance is not somewhere else. It is here, in your breath, in your ability to shift, even now, especially now. So the question remains, not whether abundance exists, but whether you're willing to see the world through its lens. And what would change if you did? The $10K hour. Imagine a moment not measured by minutes, but by its value, a single hour worth $10,000. Not because someone will hand you a check when the clock strikes 60, but because of the decisions, thoughts, and focus you pour into that hour. This is not about dreaming or hoping. The $10K hour is a deliberate shift in perception, a powerful mental model, a window into how wealthy thinkers move through time differently. And tonight, we take a quiet journey into what that hour means. On the surface, most hours look the same. 60 minutes, 3,600 seconds. We go through them brushing teeth, responding to emails, folding laundry. But not all hours carry the same weight. Not all hours build futures, and not all hours shape the path to wealth. The idea of the $10K hour comes from a rare blend of behavioral economics and mental reframing. Wealth, after all, often begins in the mind. People who build deep financial independence think about time as an asset, a resource more valuable than money because it is silently, consistently, and irreversibly spent. And so, the highest leverage individuals learn to ask themselves quietly, is this task worth what I want to earn? They place an imaginary price tag on the moment. Let's go deeper. Suppose you aim to earn $1 million a year, across a standard 40-hour work week. That translates to roughly $500 per hour. But that level of income isn't built by simply exchanging time for tasks. Jobs that pay that way are scarce. Instead, the most effective people find pockets of time, hours where they work not in the system, but on it. They identify those golden $10K hours where decisions, insights, or creations set off cascades of long-term value. Think of authors who write a single page that becomes a bestseller. Entrepreneurs who spend 1 hour negotiating a deal that multiplies their revenue. Or investors who research a company for 60 focused minutes and plant the seed for life-changing returns. These are not fictional examples. They are evidence that the way we use certain hours can fundamentally reshape our trajectory. And they begin with small mental shifts, subtle brain hacks to build wealth. In the early 1600s, the mathematician John Napier invented logarithms to simplify large calculations. It was a breakthrough that accelerated scientific discovery for centuries. What's fascinating is how much time Napier spent not calculating, but thinking about how to think differently. This act, questioning how problems are approached, is a hidden skill among those who generate massive value with their time. The wealthy don't just manage minutes, they design their moments. There is an ancient Norse symbol known as the Vegvisir, a kind of magical compass, said to help one stay on course through unknown terrain. It's not widely known in modern culture, but it holds a quiet message, that navigation through uncertainty isn't about knowing every landmark, but about having a tool to stay aligned through storm and darkness. The mind, too, can become your Vegvisir, your compass. And this is where the true essence of the $10K hour begins to form, when you align intention, attention, and meaningful action. A practical way to approach this idea is through weekly reflection. Allocate 1 hour at the start or end of each week to ask, what is the highest leverage task I can do right now? Not the most urgent, not the most familiar, but the one with possibility. It may involve strategizing a business idea, creating a new skill, deep networking, or taking a risk that's been subconsciously avoided. At first, these hours may feel unproductive. They may be uncomfortable, but over time, these hours compound. Think of compounding not just in dollars, but in clarity, in momentum, in influence. Each $10K hour is like putting a grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard in the Persian legend, where each following square doubles the number. By the 30th square, the board holds over 1 billion grains. Exponential value hides in simple starts. Another step is intentionally eliminating or delegating low-value tasks. Create space for thought. Schedule thinking time as you would a business meeting. That's not laziness. It's strategic idleness. It's understanding that creativity, insight, and wealth building often emerge not from doing more, but from thinking better. A good trigger question is this: if I had to make $10,000 in 1 hour, what would I do? You may not do it today, but asking pushes your brain into a different pattern. It starts looking for leverage, starts scanning for the intersection between skill, scale, and need. Remember, most transformational hours don't look dramatic. They feel quiet, focused, sometimes invisible to others. Sitting alone with a new idea, writing a pitch, making the uncomfortable phone call, adding a feature, saying no to a time-wasting meeting, mapping a decade of freedom on a blank sheet of paper. They are hours fueled by intention, not urgency. The $10K hour is not about chasing money. It's about honoring your capacity to create disproportionate impact, to spend time in ways that ripple far beyond the present moment. This is one of the quiet brain shifts that define those who build wealth not only in dollars, but in agency. So as you end your day, as shadows stretch long and the world winds down, ask not just how your time passed, but what seeds were planted in the silence. In your own time, in your own way, what could your next $10K hour become? Mental models of money to steal. Close your eyes if you're somewhere safe, and imagine this. Centuries ago, traders in the souks of Morocco whispered secrets not just about spices and silks, but about silver. Not its weight or purity, those were obvious, but its perceived value. They understood something long before modern economics gave it a name, that money is not just minted metal or printed paper. It's an idea, a belief shared by enough people to make it move worlds. If we're to build wealth, real and lasting wealth, we need to see money not as a number in a bank account, but as a behavior, a mental pattern, something to shape, something to steal when it's working well. This chapter is about those hidden patterns, the mental models that the wealthy often absorb and apply almost unconsciously, but we can unearth them, learn from them, and gently install them into our own minds. Consider this a quiet act of mental larceny, stealing the most valuable things they own, their ways of thinking. Our first model is called the gap and the gain. Most people look at money emotionally, measuring where they are against where they wish to be. That's the gap. It feels like you're always behind. It's a treadmill of dissatisfaction. But high performers, especially when it comes to wealth, don't fixate on how far they are from their goals. They look back and anchor themselves in how far they've come. The gain. They train their minds to price progress, not just targets. This small shift rewires motivation. Instead of chasing, you're recognizing. Gratitude replaces resentment. Progress replaces pressure. To apply it, try this. At the end of your week, take 5 minutes to write down one financial decision, small or large, that you made better than before. Maybe you resisted a purchase. Maybe you transferred a bit extra to savings. Sit with that. Let it feel like a success. Over time, this repeated focus on incremental wins builds identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to get rich and start seeing yourself as a person who behaves like someone who builds wealth. Another powerful model is leverage. Archimedes said that with a long enough lever and a place to stand, he could move the earth. Wealthy minds understand how to use other people's skills, time, or money to extend their own abilities. Not through exploitation, but through collaboration, through systems, tools, automation. A wealthy thinker doesn't ask, "How can I do this?" They ask, "How can this get done?" That one word, this, shifts the focus from self to system. You can start small. Think about one recurring task in your financial life. Let's say reviewing your expenses. Now ask, how can this get done more efficiently? Can you automate it? Delegate it to an app? Create a simplified routine? Each time you trade time for thought for structure, you take another step up the ladder of leverage. It's not money that makes rich people free. It's structure. Now let's drift deeper into a less obvious but profoundly useful mental model. Time arbitrage. Not the kind you find in economics textbooks, but in lived reality. The wealthy think in horizons. They take actions today with their eyes fixed 5, 10, even 20 years ahead. This isn't about long-term investing alone. It's behavioral. While others seek dopamine from quick results, they seek compound interest, not just of money, but of habits. Think of the Chinese concept of wei wu wei, action through inaction. It's about alignment over force. When applied to money, it means building systems that reward patience, knowing the invisible hands of time and consistency are doing heavy lifting while you sleep. Like setting up automated investments or slowly growing a side business that might bloom years later. Here's a practical step. Ask yourself where your present behaviors feed your 10-year self. Just one behavior. Make it quiet, non-glamorous, like adding $20 a week to a dividend fund, or reading 10 pages a night about building a skill that could raise your income. Over a decade, these small-time decisions rearrange your financial reality. Then there's inversion, a model stolen from engineering, but beloved by thinkers like Charlie Munger. Instead of asking, "How do I get rich?" inversion asks, "What would guarantee I stay poor?" Then it avoids those things. It's not glamorous, but it's profound. Avoiding big mistakes, debt traps, lifestyle inflation, chasing hot investments, is often more powerful than chasing perfection. Try this. Write down a personal anti-wealth list. 3 behaviors that, if continued, would quietly sabotage your financial future. Keep it somewhere close, in your journal, tucked in your wallet, not as punishment, as guidance. Like ancient mariners avoiding sea monsters marked on the edge of their maps, there's another piece of strange magic to consider. In the 16th century, alchemists in Prague used a symbol called the Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail. It signified cyclical nature, self-reinvention. Think of your money mindset like that, constantly feeding, shedding, and recreating itself. You don't just learn these models once. You revisit them, refine them. You build wealth not in a straight line, but in spirals. Higher, deeper, richer, slower. And remember, each model is not a quick fix, but a lens, a way of distinguishing illusion from insight. The mental models of money are the brain hacks of the affluent, hidden not because they're secret, but because they're quiet, patient, often unspoken. You are not too late. You are not too far behind. You are only a thought away from seeing things differently. So tonight, as the world slows and your thoughts quiet, ask yourself this. Which belief about money have I borrowed without permission? And which one am I now ready to steal back? Kill overthinking. Take a breath. Let it out gently. This is not a race. This is a slow unfolding, like mist lifting off a still lake as dawn begins whispering to the world. And in that quiet space, there's something that follows us, everywhere, every choice, dragging behind questions, uncertainty, and surge after surge of possibility weighed down by doubt. It's overthinking, a silent saboteur dressed up as logic, a deceptive friend who argues for your limitations while pretending to protect you from failure. Overthinking rarely feels like the enemy. It presents itself as caution, as due diligence, as the care of someone who wants to make the best possible decision. But left unchecked, it becomes a constant loop, a mental fog that blurs action and quietly drains the energy we need to move forward. Especially when building wealth, where clarity, timing, and belief in imperfect beginnings often matter more than perfect plans. Picture a candle flickering in a dark room. Its flame is your intention. Simple, undistracted, elegant. Now imagine trying to shield that flame with trembling hands, fearing every gust of wind. That's overthinking. In trying to guard the flame, we smother it. Our thoughts, circling possibilities, sift through every pathway until we're too exhausted to choose any. And wealth, true wealth, which is more than money, is built in the realm of doing, of momentum, of choices made even with an incomplete map. There's a story from ancient Japan, almost forgotten beyond scholarly circles, of a Zen poet named Ryokan. He lived most of his life in a hut, wore robes that barely held together, and owned nearly nothing. Yet his simplicity isn't what made him revered. It was his decisiveness about what mattered. He once wrote, "Too lazy to be ambitious, I let the world take care of itself." These weren't the words of a man lost in inaction, but of one who stopped chasing the perfect time to act. He moved when it was time, not when he had thought everything through. This is the paradox. To kill overthinking is not a call to become reckless. It is a call to trust a deeper current of intelligence within, the one that acts, tries, adjusts, learns. That second voice inside the mind, quiet and clear, that says, just begin. There's a part of the brain called the default mode network. It lights up when we're not focused on a task, during idle time, when we daydream or self-reflect. It's where much of rumination and overthinking reside. Useful for creativity, yes, but left running too long, this network begins to spiral into loops, repeating fears, amplifying what-ifs, until the smallest decision becomes a maze. The brain is wired to predict threats in order to protect you. Yet wealth building, whether in your finances, your reputation, your personal growth, demands you lean into some uncertainty. It asks for forward movement, especially when clarity isn't complete. To quiet that default mode network, enter the practice of pattern interruption. Consider something very simple. Each time you feel the heavy weight of indecision circling your thoughts, whisper this phrase to yourself. I don't need to know everything to do something. Not loudly, just enough for your nervous system to shift its gears. That small gap between thought and action is where freedom lives. A practical step that works in the modern daily storm of options is time boxing. It's elegant in its simplicity. Say you have a decision to make, a small investment, a career pivot, even a difficult conversation. Instead of letting it roam free in your mind for days, assign it a box. I'll think about this for 30 minutes, from 2 o'clock to 2:30 tomorrow. When the box opens, you engage fully. You write, you consider, and when it closes, you stop. Your brain, given that container, will learn to trust that it doesn't need to endlessly dwell. Decision becomes an event, not a haunting presence. Another approach leans into the power of the body, because thought does not live in isolation. Walk while you think. Move your limbs. Let your body be part of the decision. In ancient Rome, notable thinkers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius would often write and reflect while walking in circles inside gardens filled with laurel trees. There is something about rhythm, footfall following footfall, that calms the mind and invites clarity. The brain shifts out of abstract loops and into grounded processing. It's not just theory. Physical motion balances neurochemistry, gently pressing down on the default mode network and inviting the brain's task-oriented centers to engage. But here's where this folds back into the broader journey of wealth. When your thoughts become a tangle, your vision fractures. You begin to mistake busy thinking for progress. And so many dreams stall at this juncture. Plans sit in notebooks. Ideas die on the vine. Because we've convinced ourselves that one more thought, one more scenario, one more mental rehearsal will guarantee success. But wealth favors those willing to ship the product before it's perfect, to enter the conversation before they're fully ready, to build the bridge while crossing. Hidden in Norse myth, There's a lesser-known symbol called Wegvisir, the Wayfinder. It's a compass made of runes, designed to guide someone through stormy seas even when the path is obscured. The story goes that anyone who held it, even in the wildest weather, would not lose their way. That symbol, etched into skin or carved into ships, wasn't about knowing the exact route. It was about trusting movement when the stars disappeared. Internal guidance, step after uncertain step. And that's what you must cultivate if overthinking has kept you still. Begin with micro-decisions. Don't try to leap into empire building. Make one imperfect phone call. Launch one version of your service. Apply to one opportunity. Say yes, once, before you're ready. These are not small. They're profound acts of rebellion against thought loops that have kept you frozen. To tame overthinking is not to become thoughtless. It is to think enough. And then stop. To accept that wisdom is not born from constant analysis. It comes from rhythm, from flow, from tension followed by release. Every mind must learn this tempo. And always, loop back to awareness. Notice when your thoughts start spiraling. Use breath as an anchor. Inhale slowly. Exhale through the mouth as if blowing through a flute. Musicians in Persia once used this breath control to access clarity before making important decisions, believing that the exhale could clear not just the lungs, but the fog of the mind. You have that same power, built into your biology, a flute within your chest. If overthinking has been your companion, forgive it. It served you once. It tried to keep you safe. But now, you are building something. You are shaping not just wealth, but sovereignty. And the mind, like all instruments, must be tuned to act when it is time to act, and to rest when it is time to rest. The journey toward wealth is not only paved with numbers and logic, but with clarity, energy, and momentum. Your brain is trainable. Your patterns are not permanent. And when you learn to silence the unnecessary noise, your next step becomes obvious. So pause, listen inward. That unread email, that investment opportunity, that relationship choice. What would you do if you trusted your instincts more than your fears? What's the worst that could happen? If you just began, visualize to earn. Close your eyes, just for a moment. Imagine it's early morning, the light outside is soft and golden. You step into a quiet room, sit down with a still mind, and breathe. In this pocket of silence, your mind begins to shape a picture, an image, not of where you are, but of where you want to be. This chapter begins right there, in that sacred space between what is and what could be. Welcome to the power of visualization. To understand how visualization can pave the mental road to wealth, we need to first accept that the brain does not distinguish much between what it sees and what it vividly imagines. In studies conducted on athletes, scientists discovered that merely visualizing a movement activated brain patterns nearly identical to those formed during physical practice. The mind rehearsed, prepared, and developed strength, without a single muscle contracted. This isn't magic, it's neurology. It's how our neurons fire and wire together. When you picture something in great detail, whether it's a successful career, a profitable business, or a moment of financial freedom, you are training your brain to believe it's real, and in that belief, to subtly yet powerfully create a blueprint. Your body, your actions, your choices, they begin tracing the outlines of that imagined reality. In ancient cultures, visualization went beyond mere mental exercise. The Dogon people of Mali believed in the Nomo, spiritual beings representing order, speech, and manifestation. They believed that to think clearly was to shape reality with precision. For them, every intention was a seed, every mental image a sacred structure in progress. This wisdom, stretching across centuries, still echoes quietly in today's neuroscience. So, what does this have to do with building wealth? Wealth is not merely a byproduct of hard work. It's the outward reflection of repeated internal dialogues, the ones you have when no one else is around. Visualization, when harnessed intentionally, becomes a rehearsal for success. The mind prepares itself for choices, opportunities, and challenges long before they arrive. It builds resilience quietly. It strengthens resolve invisibly. But let me slow things down, just a little. The act of visualization isn't about daydreaming or wishful thinking. It's structured. It starts with clarity. Picture your financial future, not the vague version, not just "I want more money." Go further. Instead, what does your day look like once you've achieved this wealth? What time do you wake up? What do you wear? What kind of decisions are you making? Let your mind pay attention to every sensory detail. Smell the coffee, hear the soft pings of incoming emails from your ventures, feel the finish of your desk wood grain beneath your fingertips. These aren't just nice fantasies. The more detail you assign, the more your brain believes. When you visualize in high resolution, your mind begins recording it as experience. This leads to priming your reticular activating system, the part of the brain responsible for attention filtering. It's why, when you buy a new car, you suddenly start noticing that same model everywhere. Your mind focuses on what you've recently prioritized. With wealth visualization, your brain starts scanning your environment for opportunities, behaviors, and people that align with your vision. There's a lesser-known habit among self-made millionaires. Many of them rehearse their success mentally before it happens. They speak little of these rituals in interviews, but ask the right questions and you'll find it. Silent imagery routines before big pitches, calming visualizations during times of doubt, or even mental movies of their ideal month rolling in their heads before sleep. These are the unseen rehearsals behind outward confidence. There's also science behind this. A 2010 study published in the journal Psychology of Sport and Exercise found that mental imagery was nearly as effective as physical practice in improving motor skills. Translated to financial behavior, this means practicing confidence, negotiation, or even calm under financial stress, even in imagination, can prepare you for those real-world moments when stakes are high and doubt creeps in. To make this actionable, start simply. Each night before bed, dedicate 5 minutes to visualize one scenario. Choose a moment in your future tied to wealth, a business meeting, an investment decision, an opportunity landing in your inbox. Inject emotion into it. How do you feel? Confident, grounded? Then immerse in the environment surrounding it. The sounds, the lighting, the textures. Your brain needs the color of the moment, not just the outline. Over time, build a visualization habit library. Just as athletes have different drills, so should you. One might be your decision drill, where you see yourself making sharp strategic choices. Another might be resilience under fire, imagining how you stay composed when the market turns. Create sequences for navigating risk, negotiating contracts, or leading your team. These visuals are not random. They are rehearsal scripts for your wealth-building future. Now here's something curious to consider. The Japanese Zen tradition includes a concept called enso, a circle drawn in a single brushstroke, representing enlightenment, elegance, and the moment when the mind is free to let the body create. It's not just art, but a meditative act. When visualizing your financial future, think of it like drawing your own mental enso, a perfect, closed loop that unites intention with execution. It's not the external numbers, but the internal clarity that shapes the stroke. Still, we must remember that visualization alone is not a substitute for effort. It's a multiplier, a compass. It does not plant the garden, but ensures the seeds are arranged with precision. Research has shown that coupling vision with action leads to dramatically higher chances of reaching goals. This is why the most effective brain hacks don't just transform thoughts, they create new behaviors. And so, as you walk through your day, bring slight visualizations into ordinary moments. Waiting in line? Close your eyes for 10 seconds and see yourself mastering a financial skill. On a commute? Let your mind play a silent film of you reviewing your portfolio or negotiating your next raise. The mind loves rehearsal. It's a stage always ready. Wealth, in its deepest form, flows from repeated mental frameworks. It's built in silent, often invisible moments. And visualization is your silent co-architect. In the quiet spaces of the day, in those in-between moments where we pause, reflect, and imagine. We are not just dreaming. We are laying the tracks for something greater. We are engaging one of the most grounded yet overlooked brain hacks to build wealth, not through chance, but by refined, designed thought. Let this be a gentle reminder. Every scene you picture with clarity becomes an audition for the life you move toward. Make it vivid. Make it layered. Embody it with calm conviction. And now, in the still quiet that follows when our thoughts align with our aspirations, ask yourself softly, what does your vision feel like? And how far are you willing to follow it into reality? Subconscious blocks. We often imagine wealth as something we earn through hard work, smart investing, or financial genius. But silently, beneath the surface, there's a force more mysterious and powerful than any stock market trend or salary negotiation. It's the quiet architecture of the mind, what we believe about success, money, and our own worth, that shapes whether we attract abundance or unknowingly push it away. To grasp that, we have to explore the dark hallways of the subconscious. The subconscious is not a villain. It's more like an old librarian who shelves stories we've gathered since childhood. Some of the stories support wealth, ones about potential, possibility, and deserved success. But others, more quietly, say things like, money causes pain, ambition is selfish, or I'll never have enough. We seldom question these inner scripts because they don't shout. They whisper. Yet those whispers hold the pen on the story of our financial life. Imagine this. You're driving with one foot on the gas, ambition, planning, vision, and the other pressed on the brake. Fear, guilt, conflict. That's the paradox of subconscious blocks. On the surface, we chase wealth. But deeper in the mind, we may be resolving not to surpass a parent's income, afraid of success distancing us from our roots, or haunted by a belief that too much prosperity invites loss. This isn't just theory. Neuroscientists have traced how deeply ingrained beliefs shape our brain's behavior. Thought patterns create actual grooves, neural pathways that determine how quickly we respond to opportunity or retreat from risk. The more we repeat a belief, even silently, the more it becomes our autopilot. That's where brain hacks begin, not by forcing change, but by revealing patterns we didn't know were there. There is an old Japanese practice called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with liquid gold. Rather than hide the cracks, kintsugi honors them, making the repaired object more beautiful, more complete. Our subconscious blocks work like those cracks. They are not flaws to erase, but signals. Signals that point directly to where healing can lead to growth. Your hesitation, your fear of wealth, your tendency to retreat after success. These are golden cracks revealing where attention is needed. Maybe when you were young, you sensed discomfort in your home around money. Maybe scarcity was a frequent guest at the dinner table. Or perhaps wealth was associated not with joy, but with anger, secrecy, or pain. Without realizing it, you absorbed the emotional texture of money, not just its function, but its feeling. Decades later, that stored emotion may still be running the show. Here's something you can try. A quiet exercise. Find a still place, close your eyes, and ask gently, what was the first memory I have about money? Let it surface without judgment. Sit with it, then ask, what belief did that moment create in me? Continue, compassionately, piecing together the stories. You might uncover a belief like, money leaves, or I need to work myself to exhaustion to deserve it. Or even, if I succeed, I'll be alone. Write them down. These are not flaws. They are keys, invitations to rewire what you automatically believe. And that's the real work. Not just visualizing wealth, but clearing the debris between vision and belief. Take Maya, for example. She was a capable architect with clients seeking her designs, but she kept underquoting her work. She told herself it was humility, but through journaling and guided reflection, she remembered sitting at her kitchen table as a child, watching her father grow quiet every time her mother brought up bills. Money meant conflict. For years, Maya's subconscious had decided that less money meant more peace. Once that belief came into view, she started to question it. Slowly, she began to feel worthy of asking for more. charging for her time, and believing that abundance didn't have to come with emotional chaos. One useful daily practice is what some psychologists call belief replacement. First, identify a limiting belief. Maybe it's, I'm bad with money. Then reframe it gently, realistically. I am learning to manage money more wisely every day. Repeat it, not with force, but with warmth, as if talking to your younger self, the one who didn't know any better. The brain begins to soften, to open. Neural plasticity allows for a fresh path, a new groove, a different default. To build wealth, then, isn't only to chase earnings. It's to sit with discomfort, to see what tries to stop you, not with shame, but with curiosity. Brain hacks to build wealth are often not dazzling flashes. They are quiet rewrites. Small edits in the script that the librarian of your subconscious has shelved for decades. In parts of India, the elephant-headed god Ganesha is worshipped as the remover of obstacles. But what many don't know is that Ganesha is also the god who places obstacles when the timing isn't right, or there is more to learn. Our subconscious mind works in a similar paradoxical way. It limits us not out of malice, but protection. And recognizing this opens a gentle doorway, not always easy, but deeply transformative. You are not broken. You are just full of hidden rooms, some of them locked not with chains, but with stories waiting to be rewritten. So ask yourself now, softly, what patterns have held me back? Not because they're true, but because they were never questioned. The answer may not come all at once, but allow the question to echo. Peel back the layers, and you may just find that your pathway to wealth was there all the time, patiently waiting behind a door marked belief. 1% better daily rule. Imagine if every day, just once, you invested a sliver of your energy into becoming just 1% better than the day before. No grand overhauls, no overnight transformations, only the subtle, deliberate decision to improve a fraction. It might feel invisible in the moment, like placing a single grain of sand on a scale. But over time, those tiny iterations compound, not unlike how wealth itself grows quietly through disciplined deposits. There's a Japanese term, kaizen, which translates to continuous improvement. Toyota made it famous by weaving this concept into their production lines, encouraging every worker, from management to the most junior assembler, to constantly look for small ways to do better. The brilliance wasn't in some massive strategy rollout. It lived in the steady drip of betterment. And now, this same principle whispers to those seeking mastery in any field, especially wealth creation. The 1% better daily rule is more than a productivity tip. It's a cognitive shift, a subtle brain hack that reprograms how we interpret progress. Most people wait for enough motivation to launch into action or expect wealth to arrive once they hit a big break. But the truth waits in forgotten corners. Success is rarely sudden. It is glacial, quiet, made not from quantum leaps but from barely perceptible nudges. Imagine this, improving every day by just 1%. At first glance, it seems trivial, but much like compound interest, the returns compound geometrically. If you improve by 1% a day for a year mathematically, that's a 3,778% improvement. A number so staggering it almost feels unreal, but it is, in fact, the result of the exponential curve. The most powerful force in finance, and as it turns out, in personal growth too. But here's where the inner work begins. The brain must be trained to value the imperceptible. We're wired, evolutionarily so, to chase immediacy, big rewards, visible wins. So, our natural programming resists the slow path. That resistance is the real obstacle. To hack the brain towards wealth, one must slowly rewire it to celebrate tiny victories, to romanticize the unseen gains, to believe that today's minor step is a seed, not a consolation. Let me tell you about the kolam. In South India, outside many doorways each morning, women draw intricate geometric patterns on the ground using rice flour. To outsiders, these drawings might seem decorative, maybe even trivial, but behind each, kolam is a profound ritual of daily practice. Improvement, mindfulness. Each morning, a new pattern, each line more symmetrical than yesterday's. Over years, the hand steadies. The designs grow more elegant. This quiet, artistic commitment to small daily progress mirrors the 1% rule in spirit. It's wealth building, not in coins, but in skill, discipline, and poise. So how do we apply this in daily life? Realistically, start microscopic. Choose one domain of your financial or personal life. Perhaps it's your knowledge about budgeting, your investing insight, or your communication skills in high-stakes conversations. Now, each day, make a commitment to nudge it forward. 1%. Not 50, not 10, just 1. That might look like reading 3 pages of a finance book before bed, watching a 5-minute video on pricing psychology, sending a brief email to someone you'd like to learn from, asking one better question at a meeting, organizing one more folder in your files. The smallness is the point. Track it quietly. Use a journal or a simple digital note. Each day ask, was I a sliver better than yesterday? Some days you stumble, that's expected. But over 30 days, notice what's forming. Momentum, belief, neural circuits starting to value process over payoff. You may also design small rituals to anchor this rule into your mind. A nightly 3-minute reflection. A morning note card with just one question. How will I improve by 1% today? Rituals, even minimalist ones, offer the brain scaffolding. The act of asking nudges awareness gently toward improvement. And here's the truth tucked in all of this. The 1% rule isn't only about skills. It's about identity. Each minor choice to grow reaffirms and reshapes your self-image. With each action, you're whispering to your subconscious, I am someone who builds, who evolves, who tends to their future. In the quiet hours, late at night, or early before the world's noise returns, you begin to understand that this isn't about speed. It's about direction. Sustained motion towards a vision that right now lives only in quiet moments and unwritten journals. Building wealth, in the deepest sense, isn't only about money. It's about character, endurance, the invisible architecture that lets success land and stay. Brain hacks don't always look like shortcuts. Sometimes they're reframing the lens, teaching your mind to love the tiniest, most unglamorous improvement. The 1% rule is a game of patience. Those who win at wealth often do so not because they know secrets others don't, but because they've learned to stay longer, to remain consistent when applause is absent. In the 14th century, Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you." In many ways, the pursuit of steady improvement is not a forceful climb, but a flowing with effort, a merging of intention and acceptance. You might begin this journey skeptical. That's natural. We've been conditioned to seek more dramatic wins. But with time, you'll bend towards the quiet truth that the slowest paths are sometimes the most permanent ones. So ask yourself today, in simplicity and honesty, what is 1% better for me right now? And once you act, even briefly, notice how your mind softens into the rhythm, how it welcomes the idea that becoming wealthy, truly wealthy, is more about the kind of person you transform into than the number in a bank account. Somewhere between where you are and the wealth you dream of, there is a corridor, dimly lit, paved with tiny daily decisions. The 1% rule is the key in your hand. And as the night settles, ponder this gently. If 1% better each day leads to extraordinary change, what small choice will you make when the world is asleep and no one is watching? Smart Info Diet. In a world that moves faster than thought, we rarely pause to ask what we are feeding our minds. Not just what we believe or what we remember, but what we consume, moment to moment, in the endless stream of inputs whispering through our devices, screens, conversations, and even silences. The information diet, though often invisible, is one of the most critical currencies of our time. And if wealth is shaped first in the mind, curated knowledge is among its first architects. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You wake in the morning, and before a single decision is made, hundreds of data points are already sorting themselves in your brain. News alerts, advertisements, social media scrolls, overheard headlines. But have you ever noticed how those small bits of input subtly shape your perception of possibility? They paint your backdrop. They influence the emotional lens through which you see your own ambitions. They modulate fear, hope, urgency, and lethargy, all within moments. This is the unspoken influence of your info diet. The idea of an information diet may sound abstract, but it is as real and consequential as the foods you eat. Just as sugar and fried oils can addict and inflame the body, viral headlines and shallow media can fog and fatigue the mind. The brain, like the body, becomes what it habitually digests. But unlike junk food, low-quality information is harder to detect. It disguises itself as relevance. It performs intelligence. And all the while, it consumes your time and subtly reprograms your threshold for depth and clarity. The ancient Zendic tribes of the Bactrian region believed that too much exposure to meaningless noise, be it sound or symbols, could fracture the human soul. They lived in silence for long periods, interrupting only with meaningful speech guided by natural rhythms. To them, quality of input was not only mental, but spiritual. In our modern context, their instincts warn us with renewed relevance. Are we feeding the mind to expand it or stuffing it to distract it? In pursuing wealth, not just financial but mental clarity, emotional resilience, and enduring autonomy, it matters what we allow into our thought space. The human brain is not designed to process infinite input. It's selective. And selection is everything. Consider this. The average person consumes roughly 74 gigabytes of information per day. That's nearly 16 movies worth of visual and auditory input flooding the mind. Now realize that only a small fraction of that input is consciously remembered. The rest doesn't vanish. It burrows, shaping subconscious biases, attention patterns, and emotional rhythms. In this data torrent, being intentional isn't optional, it's essential. What if, beginning tomorrow, you treated your mind like a garden, not a landfill? What if every piece of information you allowed in had to nourish your focus, refine your judgment, or expand your internal freedom? This is the essence of a smart info diet. It's not about knowing more. It's about knowing deeply, selectively, and strategically. Start by simplifying your inputs. Pare down your media consumption to a small number of trusted, high-quality sources. Read long-form articles instead of headline skims. Replace reactive platforms with proactive learning environments. For every 10 minutes spent on news, choose 20 minutes with a book. Read a chapter from a biography. Listen to a lecture from someone who has done something, really done it, not just commented on others who have. Feed your brain with complexity. It hungers for it. Then, give your brain silence. Just as muscles grow stronger not while lifting, but during rest, the mind grows sharper during mental stillness. This is where insights settle and patterns surface. A smart information diet isn't only about external inputs. It's also about space, deliberate emptiness. Commit to having what the Japanese call ma, the silence between musical notes, or the interval that gives form to sound. In thought, ma is where wisdom finds breath to grow. Now consider the kind of content you reward with your attention. Most platforms today are engineered to deliver short-term curiosity over long-term value. If you let algorithms make your choices, you inevitably end up with noise over nuance. But when you manually choose what to read, who to follow, and when to disconnect, you're reclaiming cognitive sovereignty. You're making your brain a partner in the journey to wealth. One way to reinforce this process is by practicing information fasting. Designate 1 day a week, or even 1 hour a day, where you consume nothing external. Watch the mind scramble at first. Notice its hunger for stimulation. Then gradually observe the clarity that surfaces. The internal voice becomes more distinguishable from external chatter. You begin to hear yourself think. And from this quiet, sharper choices emerge. Benjamin Franklin, one of history's most curious and productive minds, famously designed his own structured learning routine. Each morning he would ask himself, "What good shall I do this day?" And each evening, "What good have I done?" But what many forget is that he also designed his influences carefully. He rejected popular publications of his time when they lacked substance. He fed his imagination with focused study, dialogue, and manuals written by experienced minds. This careful curation became, in essence, a mental scaffolding for the empire of ideas and inventions he would later build. A smart info diet follows this same logic. Begin not with detox, but with design. What mind do you want to cultivate? What thoughts do you want echoing in your quietest hours? What knowledge would support your best self 5 years from now? Reverse engineer your info diet accordingly. Let's bring it back to wealth, the theme beneath these explorations. Building wealth is not just about balancing budgets and pursuing revenues. It's about calibrating perception, recognizing what is signal and what is noise. The wealthiest people, mentally and monetarily, often don't consume more information than others. They consume more selectively. Their advantage is not just in hustle, it's in clarity. That clarity begins in the quality of what they allow into their mental field. Even 1 degree of change in the quality of your information intake each day can compound remarkably over time. Over months, you'll find your thoughts shifting, your goals becoming more discernible, your curiosity deepening. Suddenly, you're less reactive to trends, less distracted by the flood, and more focused on the slow, sturdy arc that builds legacy. There is an ancient Chinese symbol, one seldom seen outside calligraphy scrolls. Tinganaz. It means to listen. But within the character are layers, components that signify ears, eyes, heart, and undivided attention. To truly listen, the symbol says, is to engage with one's full presence. That is the deeper invitation of a smart information diet. To listen not just with ears, but with intention. To absorb selectively. To think with discernment. And so, begin there. Trim the noise. Seek the real. Let what you take in reflect the vision you aim to become. If the brain is your most powerful engine for long-term wealth, then let it be fueled not just by novelty, but by resonance, by the measured rhythms of clarity, constraint, and care. What might happen if, instead of feeding your fears, your mind began feasting on ideas crafted to grow you? How would your perceptions shift? What new possibilities might crystallize in the silence between distractions? Let that question linger a while, long enough to echo. Allow stillness to speak, and allow your mind, at last, the luxury of being fed well. Systems thinking. Imagine for a moment that wealth is not the result of a single decision, a flash of genius, or a sudden surge of luck. Imagine instead that wealth, in its truest and most sustainable form, is the outcome of a system. A quiet, complex rhythm of interconnected parts harmonizing over time. Systems thinking invites us to step away from the temptation of isolated choices. It asks us to rise above the scattered points of input and consider the landscape as a whole, the contours and currents beneath the surface that shape our financial worlds. When people talk about building wealth, they often point to tactics. Budget better, save more, invest early. While these ideas work in isolation and may bring marginal improvement, their true power reveals itself only when viewed as components of a larger, integrated system. Systems thinking is the lens through which these independent tactics align into strategy. It is the habit of recognizing patterns over events, long-term flow over short-term noise. Let's trace the roots of this perspective. In the 20th century, systems thinking emerged from the work of engineers and early computer scientists trying to understand the behavior of complex machines and feedback loops. But it didn't stop there. The field extended into biology, sociology, ecology, mapping everything from the cycles of ecosystems to the structure of civilizations. When this concept met the realm of finance and wealth building, it gave birth to a powerful insight. Money moves through systems. And more importantly, people operate within systems. Think of your personal finances not as a bank account to check, but as a living, breathing ecosystem of decisions. Income streams, expenses, habits, motivations, relationships, beliefs. Each element interacts with the others. They push, pull, accelerate, or stall your progress, often invisibly. And to see those invisible currents is the first great step toward mastering them. It helps to understand feedback loops, the heart of every system. There are two types: reinforcing loops and balancing loops. Reinforcing loops produce exponential growth or collapse. Think compound interest, skill development, or a habit of saving that builds momentum. Balancing loops, on the other hand, resist change, like unexpected expenses, lifestyle inflation, or self-doubt. Wealth grows when reinforcing loops are fed and balancing loops are understood and neutralized. Let's walk through a familiar story. A young professional earns her first real salary. At first, she saves a little. She invests in some courses. Her skills improve, and soon she lands a higher-paying job. Encouraged, she increases her contributions to retirement accounts. Money starts to build. She chooses healthier routines, joins communities that prioritize financial literacy, avoids toxic money habits. With each loop reinforcing the other, she crafts a system not driven by any single choice, but by a web of habits, feedback, and slow compounding. This is not just wealth creation. It is self-reinforcement. It is systems thinking in action. In contrast, consider the invisible dangers of fragmented thinking, believing that one day's savings or a sudden windfall will fix everything. Obsessing over a single investment while ignoring long-term planning. These are reflections of linear thought, step-by-step reasoning, blind to feedback and delay. And while our brains are wired to respond to the immediate, systems reward those who think beyond it. One of the most haunting truths about systems is time delay. A system rarely shows immediate results. The seed planted today may take months or years to bear fruit. For many, this wait becomes disheartening. They abandon the system in search of quicker fixes. But for those who understand the nature of systems, the lag between cause and visible effect, patience becomes a rare and valuable currency. There's a Japanese concept called ma, which refers to the space between things, the silence between musical notes, the pause in conversation, the emptiness in art. In systems thinking, ma is the delay between your actions and the outcomes they eventually shape. Cultivating a relationship with these in-between spaces is itself a form of mastery. So how do we apply this in real life? How do we move from fragmented behaviors to fluid systems? Begin by mapping the elements. Start with your financial inflows. Salary, side income, dividends. Draw them as sources. Now trace your outflows. Fixed bills, discretionary spending, hidden drains. Look at your habits. Late-night purchases, spontaneous generosity, impulse travel. See how they connect. Identify the reinforcing loops. Perhaps waking early leads to better focus, which leads to better work, more value, and higher income. Lean into those. Then surface the balancing loops. Maybe social pressure leads you to overspend, which creates stress, which leads to more costly coping behaviors. Name and examine them. Then replace isolated goals with systemic direction. Don't simply aim to save $5,000. Instead, design a system where saving is automatic. A percentage of your income rerouted the moment it arrives. Pair it with an alert system, a reflection journal, a visual dashboard. Encode the behavior into a process rather than an act of will. And finally, practice resilience through reflection. Systems adapt. Your goals will shift. Your life will evolve. Rigid structures break under change, but systems with feedback and flexibility survive and thrive. Make it a habit to review your ecosystem regularly. Ask what emerged, what broke, where did energy accumulate, and where did it leak? In the Norse mythos, there is a lesser-known symbol called the Vegvisir, an ancient compass that Vikings believed would help its bearer find their way, even when the path was lost in storm or darkness. Systems thinking is our Vegvisir in the vast sea of financial decisions. It does not promise immediate clarity, but it offers guidance through complexity. When the market dips, when plans fail, when progress feels invisible, a well-designed system continues quietly in the background, guiding gently forward. These quiet navigations are the real brain hacks to build wealth, not shortcuts or tricks, but mental rewiring. Training your brain to step back, to scan broadly, to tune into patterns, to see the long arc of motion, not just the snapshot. Instead of reacting to each financial event, you become the designer of feedbacks, the author of flow. Consider this. The most successful investors, entrepreneurs, and thinkers rarely chase linear paths. They think in circles, feedbacks, and cycles. They remove themselves from the daily swirl of transactions and ask, what system am I building? What story is it telling over time? Tonight, as the noise of the day fades, allow yourself to ask a different kind of question. Not what action to take next, but what system to construct. What chain of choices, habits, and quiet flows will carry you toward the life you're designing? And as you drift into sleep, let this thought echo gently. What patterns are you weaving each day, and where do they lead when viewed from above? Mirror the rich. Imagine sitting silently in a grand hall, light slanting through high windows, watching a wealthy benefactor walk past marble columns with effortless grace. They are not rushed. They are not explaining. They move with a kind of knowing. There's something rhythmic, patterned to it. It feels as though they see life through a different lens. The question is, what if you could look through that same lens? To understand wealth not just as a financial status, but as a mode of being, we begin with a subtle but powerful concept: mirroring. It's not about imitation in the theatrical sense. True mirroring is internal. It is behavioral osmosis. It's how our brains, through neural mirroring systems, mimic the actions and beliefs of those we observe and admire. The ancient principle says, as above, so below, a whisper from the Hermetic tradition, suggesting that observing the architecture of a greater system can inform the workings of your own individual world. This is not just philosophy. In neuroscience, mirror neurons allow your brain to simulate the experiences of others just by observing them. When you watch someone take confident action, your mind rehearses it, even before your body follows. Through these neural pathways, you can begin crafting a new internal blueprint, one that aligns not with where you are, but with where you aim to be. To mirror the rich is not to become them. It's to align with the hidden patterns behind their success. Patterns of thought, emotional regulation, decision-making under pressure. Wealth, in this sense, is less about assets and more about atmosphere. Billionaire investor Ray Dalio, for example, speaks often about radical transparency and deeply examining mistakes. It's a mindset, a mirror, polished through intention and discipline. So then, how do you mirror the rich in a meaningful, actionable way? The first step is to study their rituals and reasoning. Ask not only what they do, but why they do it. Many of the wealthiest individuals rise early. But it's not about waking up at 5 in the morning. It's about claiming undistracted time to think, to plan, to reset the compass inward. Consider maintaining what's called a rich routine journal. Each morning, before the day begins, write down what choices you believe a wealthy mind would make today, in how it responds to challenge, in how it manages impulse, in where it places attention. Evening entries then become a reflection. Did you embody that state? Where was your alignment steady and where did it waver? Over time, a neural imprint forms. Some successful people use affirmations, others visualization, but perhaps more influential are micro-decisions, those invisible forks in the road that govern your behavior. Do you delay gratification or seek the hit of a fleeting pleasure? Mirroring begins there. Next time you face a choice, pause and ask, what would a wealth-oriented mind do now, this very second? A lesser-known example comes from Japanese culture, the symbol of the kintsugi bowl. When a ceramic vessel breaks, instead of discarding it, Japanese artisans repair the cracks with gold dust mixed into lacquer. The fractures become part of the beauty. There's an echo of this in the psychology of wealthy individuals. Failures aren't red marks, they're refined outlines of strength. Each loss is studied, stitched with experience, and displayed. If you adopt that lens, mistakes become milestones. Pain becomes process. Watch how the wealthy engage with time. Look at how they position themselves in conversations. Listen to when they speak and when they choose silence. Notice how their space is ordered, how their routines guard their mental clarity. These are more than preferences. They are environmental extensions of inner order. Wealth is sustained not by scattered ambition, but by focused restraint. To that end, consider simplifying your environment. Scan your daily landscape. Is it filled with digital noise and decision fatigue? Create clarity. Limit energy drains. One of the richest forms of wealth isn't money, it's attention. Direct yours like a precious stream. There's also who the rich surround themselves with, not just in terms of network or power, but the quality of conversations they hold. Deep dialogue, not small talk. Strategy over drama. They ask different questions. What's sustainable? What's leverageable? How do I compound this seed? You can begin adopting that same pattern. Even if those people aren't in your immediate circle, they can exist in books, in podcasts, in documentaries. Your brain mirrors what it frequently consumes. Fill it wisely. Now zoom out. Each small habit you align, each thought you upgrade, builds a new internal structure, where wealth is not a distant mountain to climb, but a state of mind you nurture daily. This is the quiet revolution, the subtle brain hack that shifts the axis of your life's architecture. Think of the mind as a garden. What grows there can multiply, even if you begin with a single seed. And if you cultivate the soil using the patterns, thoughts, and emotions of those who have already walked the path of prosperity, your garden begins to reflect theirs, not through mimicry, but through resonance. It's important to remember that mirroring the rich isn't about lifestyle mimicry. It's about decoding the undercurrents of thought and decision that enable them to live in abundance. Wealth is as much a psychological frequency as it is a financial condition. And tapping into it requires tuning your internal compass, not toward who you've been, but who you are becoming. The reflection in the mirror begins subtly. The way you pause before responding, the way you sit a little taller in your chair, the questions you ask, the boundaries you honor. Day by day, you become the pattern you're tracing. And so, as you move through your own quiet hours, ask yourself gently, which patterns am I closest to? Which thoughts shape my future even now without a word? In the shadows of night or the hush of early morning, the mirror is always ready. The question is, what do you dare to reflect? Identity shift. Imagine standing at the edge of a still lake just before dawn. The air is thick with silence, not empty, but full of potential. That moment is who you are now. The ripple you choose to send across that water becomes who you are becoming. Identity, as it turns out, is not a rigid monument built once and never touched again. It is a flowing current of interpretations, beliefs, and internal narratives. And in the pursuit of wealth, not just in money, but in mindset, choices, and legacy, this internal self-story is the cornerstone. Shifting identity is perhaps one of the most profound and subtle brain hacks to build wealth. Because behind every decision we make, whether to save or spend, to risk or retreat, is not just logic or emotion, but a self-perception that quietly says, this is what someone like me does. The trick, then, is to become someone else. Not through deception or pretense, but by gently, deliberately evolving. Not through force, but through invitation. A call inward to realign our habits with a deeper vision of who we wish to be. This journey begins not in our actions, but in our self-concept. Take, for example, ancient Japanese No theater. In this storied tradition, actors do not wear masks to hide their identities. They wear them to reveal something more truthful than their human faces could express. Each mask is crafted not just with design, but with intent, channeling a persona through posture, breath, and gaze. When a No performer dons a mask, they cease to act. They become. So too with identity. What if, rather than trying to manage money better, you simply became the type of person who does? What if you wore the internal mask of a disciplined investor, or a calm and calculated thinker, not to feign, but to inform who you are? There is a moment, muffled under years of doubt and inertia, where a subtle belief can root itself in the soil of your mind. I am someone who builds wealth. This isn't a mantra you repeat to the mirror each morning. It's a seed you water with choices. Now think about the brain's wiring. The neural pathways we use most become like well-worn trails. The brain, ever efficient, defaults to the roads we've walked before. Identity is housed here, in repeated patterns of thought and behavior. But every time you take a new route, every time you challenge a self-limiting belief and act from a new place of self-assurance, you etch a new line into the brain's map. There's a term from neuroscience: Hebbian learning. Cells that fire together wire together. In other words, by repeatedly pairing a belief with an action, like the belief that you are worthy of wealth, paired with the action of tracking your spending, you form a stronger connection. Over time, the belief becomes self-reinforcing. That's the beginning of identity shift. Not by changing everything overnight, but by repeatedly proving to yourself that a new version already exists within reach. But here's the deeper truth. Identity is not just crafted internally. It's shaped by our environments, our peer groups, the invisible culture we bathe in every day. If you are surrounded by people who hustle impulsively, laugh at budgeting, or spend to mask discomfort, your brain receives silent cues to stay the same. So, one actionable step: turn your attention to the people and signals you allow into your daily life. Curate your digital and social landscape as carefully as you tend a garden. Follow creators who embody the financial mindset you're stepping into. Listen to podcasts while commuting that speak the language of strategic growth, long-term thinking, and purposeful living. Eventually, your daily inputs begin to mirror the values you want to make your own. Another pivot lies in language. Words aren't just tools. They are containers of identity. Begin noticing how you speak about money, about success, about yourself. Do you say, "I'm just bad with money," or "I've never been good at investing"? Shift that language. Frame your sentences to match who you are becoming, not who you've been. Try instead, "I'm learning how to make smart financial decisions." That slight turn in phrasing opens a door. Here's a simple practice. Each evening before sleep, write down one sentence that begins with, "The kind of person I am becoming." Let the sentence finish itself. It might read, "The kind of person I am becoming saves first and spends later." Or, "The kind of person I am becoming studies before reacting." These phrases are not corny affirmations. They are rehearsals for your mind to step into a new role. With enough repetition, you step into the part with confidence, authenticity, and action. Across Tibetan culture, there's a delicately woven symbol called the endless knot. It's made of lines that weave into and out of themselves, with no beginning and no end. It represents the intertwined nature of wisdom and compassion, of cause and effect. But it can also be seen another way: identity in motion, shifting endlessly, formed by loops of thought and action and belief, with every thread interlaced with potential. Becoming wealthy, in any sense of the word, is not about chasing more. It's about crafting a self aligned with the outcomes you desire. Wealth follows identity, identity shapes behavior, behavior builds results. It's not a race, it's a redefinition. And remember, this doesn't mean abandoning who you are now. It means integrating a richer version of yourself, a you who is already in there, waiting for the world to meet them. So tonight, as you lie beneath your ceiling with its familiar shadows, ask yourself quietly, not who am I, but who am I becoming? And what small truth will I live tomorrow that confirms this shift is already underway? Let that question echo gently through your thoughts. Let it rest beside you like a whisper. Pattern recognition. The most powerful shifts in wealth rarely begin with a grand announcement. More often, they begin with a whisper, an insight tucked inside a pattern, waiting patiently for someone attentive enough to notice. Pattern recognition is not just an ability. It is a cultivated skill, a quiet superpower that allows the mind to read beyond the surface of numbers, movements, behavior, and chance. To see patterns is, in a very real way, to predict the future, not in grand visions, but in small, consistent truths that build upon each other. From the neurons in your brain to the tides of financial markets, everything flows in rhythms. Recognizing those rhythms grants you leverage. Not dominance, not control, just leverage. And with leverage, even small efforts can produce magnified results. Your brain is a pattern-seeking machine. From birth, It learns by identifying consistencies, linking cause and effect, recognizing faces, reading emotions, predicting outcomes. It was evolution's way of helping you survive. But survival is not the only purpose anymore. With conscious practice, this same mechanism can be turned toward something more, toward building wealth, toward crafting a more intentional life. Successful investors, artists, entrepreneurs, they all tap into the same cognitive skill. It's why Warren Buffett reads for 6 hours a day, scanning for subtle pattern shifts. It's why traders spend years not only analyzing graphs, but training their minds to feel movement ahead of the data. It's why innovators often walk alone for long hours, allowing the noise of the world to fall away, so the murmur of patterns has space to rise. And yet, the challenge lies in distinguishing between a real pattern and a coincidence. Your brain, eager to connect, sometimes imagines links that aren't there. That's the double edge of this ancient mechanism. The mind may see faces in the clouds, conspiracies where there's only chaos. So the goal isn't to simply notice patterns, it's to test them, refine them, sharpen discernment like a blade honed over time. Consider this. Japanese rice traders in the 18th century developed candlestick charting, a visual way to track price action and uncover market tendencies. One pattern, known as the 3 black crows, signals a potential reversal after a bullish run. 3 descending candlesticks, black, foreboding, each closing lower than the last. It's vivid imagery. Not just data, but narrative. The rice traders weren't just watching numbers. They were listening to a story unfold in coded visuals. Wealth, for them, was hidden in these quiet, repetitive beats. The same principle applies today. Every market movement, every decision impulse, every consumer trend is woven into a story, and your job, if you wish to build wealth, is to read that story faster, more clearly, maybe even before it's fully written. But how do we train our minds for this? How do we refine a sense as ancient as instinct and make it practical? Slow repetition, controlled curiosity, a willingness to be wrong 100 times so that on the 101st, something shifts. An actionable practice is this. Every evening, take 10 minutes and write down the 3 most surprising things you encountered that day. They could be moments at work, news headlines, interactions with strangers. Over time, track what repeats. Are certain themes appearing again and again? What behaviors are you seeing in yourself or others? What emotional responses surface from consistent triggers? Identifying these micro-patterns isn't just self-reflection. It's the ground layer of forecasting. It's pattern recognition turned inward and outward. In the world of high-speed finance, algorithms now scan millions of data points a second to detect opportunities invisible to the human eye. But the human brain retains something deeper than speed. Intuition shaped by experience. What machines replicate in scale, we deliver in nuance. A single glance, a subtle tension shift, a line on a chart humming with meaning. Pattern recognition lives not only in what you see, but in what you feel arising from repetition. One often overlooked symbol that echoes this truth is the Ouroboros, the ancient emblem of a serpent eating its own tail. It appears across cultures, from Egyptian iconography to Norse mythology. A ceaseless loop, death and rebirth, endings feeding beginnings. In economic terms, it reflects cycles that collapse and regenerate, booms that give way to busts, only to rise again. To recognize patterns truly is to understand the spiral of time, not just its line. An artist may recognize a mood returning in her painting style. A business owner notices when buying patterns subtly shift before a season's change. And an investor, patient and quiet, might see the first whisper of retraction in a market others still claim is rising. Each one interprets a language the untrained eye cannot see. This brings us back to the theme we carry through this entire journey: brain hacks to build wealth. Most hacks are surface level, lists, tips, tricks made for fast consumption. But pattern recognition is different. It doesn't deliver quick dopamine. It requires presence, wide-angle listening, long-term thinking. You are not hacking wealth by slicing time into pieces, but by stepping back and watching the shape of time itself bend and repeat. Over time, this becomes less about money and more about understanding the systems that move behind the curtain. Wealth, then, is the aftermath. The byproduct of seeing clearly before others do, of resisting the impulse to act on noise, of noticing what quietly always seems to return. In ritual and in data, in intuition and in numbers, the rhythms are there. You learn to listen, and in that listening, a map unfolds. What patterns are waiting in your life right now? Ones you've seen 1,000 times but never quite recognized. If you watched your days from above, like footprints carved into snow, where would the trail point, and would you follow? Anti-fragile mind. There is a difference between being strong and being anti-fragile. Strength resists shock, fatigue, and change, but anti-fragility improves because of them. Just as myth tells us that the Hydra grew 2 heads for every one that was cut off, the mind too can evolve through stress, if it's trained not just to endure, but to transform. Tonight we begin with the idea that fragility is not merely weakness, but the inability to use adversity for growth. In a world that changes faster than comprehension allows, where markets swing and careers shift and reputations are rebuilt overnight, it is no longer enough to build routines that protect you. You must build a mind that transforms under pressure. You see, wealth, true wealth, is rarely just a matter of accumulation. It's not only how much you have, but how well your mind metabolizes risk, adapts to uncertainty, and perceives what others panic over. It's a game of perception. And for that, the most critical asset is an anti-fragile mind. Let's go back in time to the sands of ancient Mesopotamia. In the ruins of Nineveh, there was a clay tablet dating back nearly 3,000 years. On it, inscribed in cuneiform, were scenarios asking the reader to consider both fortune and disaster. Not to run from either, but to imagine them as catalysts. Embedded in these ancient exercises was a mindset remarkably close to what we call mental resilience today. These societies shared stories of gods and men not because they were invincible, but because they transformed through hardship. To cultivate anti-fragility, then, may be one of the original brain hacks that generates not just survival, but prosperity. Modern neuroscience agrees. Stress, in mild and controlled doses, stimulates neurogenesis, the birth of new brain cells. When you step slightly outside your comfort zone, when you expose yourself to an element of risk, when you willingly invite challenge instead of avoidance, the brain begins to rewire. You don't just become better prepared, you become different. There is beauty in that kind of metamorphosis. It's the quiet shift of a person who once feared the future, learning to see setbacks not as ends, but as inflection points. Many of the greatest financial successes carry behind them a hidden layer of hardship. Bankruptcy before breakthrough. Failure before fortune. What separates the confused from the capable is not how they protect themselves from difficulty, but how fluently they extract meaning and lessons from it. This is the core of the anti-fragile mind. The Stoics of ancient Rome once performed what they called premeditatio malorum, imagining negative events before they happened. Seneca, for example, would regularly reflect on the loss of wealth, power, and even life, not out of despair or pessimism, but to prepare the mind. When you simulate hardship mentally, you grant your brain the resilience to face it calmly when reality delivers its version. Modern psychologists might call this cognitive rehearsal, but it's more than that. It's turning the fear of loss into a form of psychological capital, watching with detachment as fear passes through you like a season, knowing that you are deeper rooted than circumstance. Today, in the pursuit of building wealth, most focus narrowly on tactics, savings plans, investment strategies, time management tools. And while those have their place, they are only as useful as the mind that wields them. If the mind is brittle, it cracks. If the mind is anti-fragile, it bends and reforms its shape with every new challenge, wiser than before. Here's a simple, actionable step to begin the transformation. Choose one controlled stressor to invite into your life regularly. It could be waking an hour earlier than usual, taking a cold shower, fasting briefly, or speaking in a meeting despite anxiety. These are small experiments, but they carry large effects. Each time your brain receives the signal, discomfort is not a threat, it's a training ground. Most people avoid discomfort. Anti-fragile thinkers walk toward it, knowingly, slowly, like monks through a storm. And each repetition builds that rare trait, a mind that sharpens in the fire of challenge, while others melt. There is a lesser-known symbol once etched into the seal of the Mongol Empire, a snow leopard. Unlike the lion or the dragon, whose power is obvious, the snow leopard survives unseen, thrives in extremes, and strikes with elegance in thin air. It's a subtle emblem of strength through exposure, adaptation through solitude. The Mongols believed power was not in display, but in endurance, in developing a mind that did not fear terrain, weather, or war, but used each to hone its edge. So too must we learn to navigate the unknown, not by shielding ourselves, but by refining our mental tools. Perspective, focus, calm under fire. To build wealth in the modern age, reflect on this. Your mind is either a glass or a prism. When stress strikes, does it shatter, or does it refract light in surprising directions? Anti-fragility isn't about invincibility. It's about integration. Learning to take the chaos of the world and digest it into clarity. Letting loss teach you value. Letting failure show you the architecture of success. Letting fear become signal rather than obstacle. In time, as the seasons move and life gathers its unpredictable textures, you will find that cultivating such a mind is, unusually, one of the greatest investments you can ever make. A brain that evolves from challenge is a brain that unlocks abundance, even when the external world is in flux. And so, as we close this chapter and continue on this journey of brain hacks to build wealth, consider softly, what if every frustration you face was not in your way, but lighting the way? Let that thought linger and gently unfold. Calm equals cash. Imagine you're walking through an old Japanese rock garden. The paths are perfectly raked. Each stone seems carefully placed by time itself. There's no sound but the faint rhythm of wind and maybe the distant rustle of bamboo. You breathe slower here, naturally. There's no urgency, just clarity. That's calm. And calm is where wealth begins. We often associate wealth with action, with hustle, with the relentless grind that fills our social feeds and daily routines. We're told to go faster, to consume more information, to stay ahead of the curve. But the brain, the true engine of wealth, functions best not in chaos, but in stillness. Calm sharpens clarity. It stabilizes decision-making. It reduces impulsive behavior, the same impulsivity that leads to bad trades, careless spending, rushed business decisions, or career changes based on fleeting emotion. Your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for reasoning and control, thrives in calm. And when it thrives, so does your ability to build and sustain wealth. Here's a lesser-known truth, wrapped in centuries-old understanding. In ancient Tibetan tradition, the wind horse, known as lungta, was believed to carry good fortune when one's spirit, energy, and the natural world were in balance. A calm mind, they believed, steadied the wind horse, allowing wealth, not just of coin but of culture and community, to ride in smoothly. Wind horse banners lined mountain passes not to create luck, but to remind you to align within, where true prosperity begins. Modern neuroscience now supports what ancient wisdom always sensed. The brain under stress narrows focus, shortens your time horizon, spikes cortisol, and essentially primes you for short-term survival, not long-term growth. That stress response was great for escaping predators. It's terrible for analyzing investments, conducting nuanced negotiations, or building a life of patient compounding gains. So how do powerful people stay grounded while so many of us panic during a downturn, scroll endlessly looking for tips, or fall prey to the next shiny thing? The answer is not more intellect. It's nervous system management, emotional regulation, discipline disguised as calm. Take Warren Buffett. Known for quiet confidence, he reads over 500 pages a day and makes major decisions infrequently. It is not that he ignores the noise. It's that he's trained not to react to it. His calm is strategic. It is part of his wealth creation engine. For him and for others like him, calm isn't a passive state. It is an earned skill, cultivated over years. This is where the brain hack begins. Cultivate calm not as a byproduct of success, but as an active input. Start small, with frictionless rituals. Begin your mornings in stillness. Just 4 minutes of quiet before screens, before emails, before news. Let your mind set its tone before the world tries to color it in. During the day, use what's called physiological sighing. A double inhale through the nose, finished with a long exhale through the mouth. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural brake pedal. It resets your state. That calm gives rise to clearer thinking. Bound what you allow in. Your attention is the oxygen of your awareness. Coach yourself gently, not to chase every headline or respond to every notification. Turn 30 minutes of reactive chaos into a deep session of focused creation. If you invest that time in learning, in creating value, in connecting with core goals, you start compounding. A surprisingly simple but effective strategy is known as the 90-second rule. When a disruptive emotion spikes, anger, anxiety, fear, pause for 90 seconds. That's how long it typically takes for the neurochemical storm to pass. During those 90 seconds, breathe, observe, and allow the emotion to exist without letting it run your decisions. That one pause can alter the entire trajectory of an outcome. That's wealth in motion. When you begin to practice this consistently, you lower the baseline noise of the mind. You'll find that patience starts to feel profitable. You'll start noticing patterns others miss, connections they scroll past. You move from reacting to designing, from chasing trends to building timeless strategies. There's also the financial benefit that comes with calm. Studies from the University of Chicago show that traders with higher levels of emotional regulation made over 25% more in long-term net returns than their counterparts. These traders weren't necessarily more intelligent. They weren't even more experienced. They were simply more calm, more grounded, less likely to let panic override planning. Consider this. In a single hour, a miscalculated decision made from panic can erase years of hard-earned gains. But a decision delayed for clarity, a choice refined in stillness, can preserve and multiply wealth in ways no spreadsheet can show. Calmness is not complacency. It is measured movement, precision born from presence. As the world rushes ahead, the most valuable currencies, focus, clarity, time, are quietly eroded by noise. But the calm mind reclaims them. Real calm is resilient. It doesn't mean you're untouched by the world. It means you're anchored within it. It means that even when the market dips, when the job becomes uncertain, when plans change, you return to center. Not out of habit, but out of practiced ease. To build wealth with your brain, you must first learn to quiet it. It will not happen on its own. You must teach it, moment by moment, how to stay still so it can listen, so it can see, so it can choose. In the end, no one can gift you this calm. It is earned, gently, but firmly. Through breath, habit, and discipline. Through turning toward discomfort, not away. Through learning which fears are signals and which are simply echoes of your past. The most valuable asset is attention. Where you place it, how you shape it, and whether it stands steady in a storm determines more than most ever realize. Calm equals cash, yes, but more than that, calm builds capacity to endure, to grow, and to realize the full arc of your potential. So the question, softly rising as the noise fades, in a world that speeds up by the second, can you slow down enough to truly grow rich?